time, people counting me out, put their mouth on me, I moved in self-doubt. I got to know it's not what they say, but what I believe that guides my faith. I don't need you to validate me. I know who I am. I'm created to be a life that reflects what my eyes dare to see, or the greatness I possess and this possibility. Look in the mirror, what do I see? There is no time or any space for the outside noise that run the rat race. Poisonous lips spewing self-hate, detentions and killings, they all resemble my face. Rise up in love, take your rightful place. You're a royal priesthood and you were born this way. And we must fight our way through the darkest night. Guide us to reflect on that infinite light.
Welcome to another segment of Seek Elevation, the Seek Elevation experience with yours truly, Attorney Alakeisha. I am an attorney, but I may not be yours. So I'm not giving you legal advice, but I am giving you all types of gems for you to use now to apply to your life, whether that be legal or otherwise. Seek Elevation is where real issues, real people, real conversations take center stage, because change does not happen in silence. And I want this to be an environment for growth where change seekers can come to get those gems, whether it's from sports and entertainment to business and community. Right here is where we break down truth, we spark meaningful change, and we elevate voices that need to be heard, whether that's voices from individuals who are experts in certain fields or industries that I bring on to pour into the listeners and viewers, or if that's you who want to share the stage, to share what's going on real time, real situations, so we can all learn together, grow from it, and you can get inspiration and motivation from other people. But in this space, either way, we don't just talk, we empower, we inspire, and we change the status quo. So whether you're an athlete or an entertainer, a business leader, or just someone striving for a better life, these conversations that I bring to you on Tuesday, there are conversations for you. There are conversations for me. So I want all of us to tap in wherever you feel necessary. I would love for you to drop a comment, ask a question. Closed mouths do not get fed. And I think tonight would be a great time to ask questions with the guests that I have coming on. We're talking about financial power moves, and we're talking about building wealth that works while you don't. And I know I want to probe into some questions of what does that even mean? Because a lot of times we do have these conversations about financial literacy, because financial literacy is important. But I think because we talk about it or we use that word so much, there's a lot that's lost in that word. There's a lot not given or shared within that word. Like, what does that mean? If you're going to help me be financially literate, how can I take that information and actually apply it in real time? And so I want to probe into some questions like that to see if our guests can give us some of those answers, give us the information, and also how does it apply to where I'm at in the space and place in my life. So make sure you definitely share this segment because financial touches all of our lives, no matter what. So share it. If you have questions, like I said, you can drop a comment, but if you have questions, ask your question. And I would definitely share your question with the guests on the stage. And let's just make impact together. And what I'm hoping is by the end of this segment, you'll understand the key principles of financial literacy that we're talking about. And hopefully you'll understand some things or you'll get some information on things that are never taught, that people don't touch on. I will try to probe on that. But again, your questions help to make sure that happens because, of course, I only have one mind. I can't get into everybody's mind, but you have this. That's the reason why I went live this season, is because I didn't want to just interview individuals, pre-record the segment, the interview, drop it, and then people are listening, but then they have a lot of questions just watching it. Now I want to go live. So if you do have questions, you can ask them in real time. But if for some reason you can't catch the live and you have to watch it on replay, whether that is replay on YouTube, LinkedIn, whatever, or if you're listening on audio, you can always come back and drop your comments or ask your questions in the comment section, and I will get around to it. And if, of course, if I don't know the answer because I brought a guest on, then I will share that question with that guest and pull them into that conversation on YouTube. So that's what I want us to get. But I want us to really think about, how do we manage our money? How do we multiply our money? How do we create income that doesn't rely constantly on a hustle? Those are some things that's at the top of my mind, so that you can walk away with practical strategies to build wealth that supports your freedom, support your long-term vision, or even legacy, whatever that means. And sometimes I ask myself, and I don't know if you sit with this, and we're at a time right now where these questions are being asked of ourselves. There's just a lot going on. I was looking at something the other day. I think his name is John Hope Bryant. He had a video come up, and he has said he was commenting about something an influencer said, and I guess an influencer must have mentioned something about $100,000 not being much or whatever. I don't know. I didn't see that part of it, but I seen John Hope Bryant. If you go to his Instagram page or wherever else, he probably shared it on other social media pages, but I seen on Instagram where he shared his response to whoever this major influencer is. And he has said, please stop saying that $100,000 isn't much. It's a whole lot. I make multi-millions and I still don't take $100,000 for granted. But when he had said this, he had gave a statistic. And I want to look more into it now after he shared this. I didn't get a chance to, but I want to dig more into it. Statistically, he was saying only 6%. And it may have been only 6% of Black Americans make $100,000 a year. And I was taken back. I was like, is that true? Is this true? 6% of the entire American population? I was shocked. And it's things like that. Yes, I want the information. I love learning information, but I don't want to get discouraged, caught up, distracted by that. Actually, I want to be motivated by it. Okay, if this is true, if I do my research and come to find out this is true, how can I continue to do my part? How can you continue to do your part? How can we do it together to change that statistic? And sometimes I don't know, sometimes I guess I get leery about statistics only because it's numbers based on who is responding to information gathering. Not sure where they got the information from, who actually honestly reports all of the information. So sometimes I'm kind of leery, but even if it's not 6%, it's just a low number. I want us to, I want us to win together. And whatever I can do, however I can do my part, I'm going to do my part in that. So I asked myself questions like, okay, if I was to stop working today, doing all the things that brings in money, how long could my money work for me? Because most of us, majority of us, spend a lifetime working for money, but we never learned how or been in a position to make money work for us. And so I asked myself that question, and this is the information I want to get tonight from that. How can that happen? And I'm always doing the things to put myself in that position. And I know some people feel like they say, money isn't everything. Money isn't everything. So why does it all matter? Right? Money is not everything, but struggling isn't either. Not getting what's due to you isn't either. And money funds the mission, whatever that mission is. Money funds the mission. I don't believe that the sole focus attraction should just be on, chasing money. You don't chase anything because it's going to run from you. I do believe on tapping into whatever it is that you have to offer, whatever it is that you have to share, tapping into that and elevating it so high that it becomes a magnet and attracts all the things for you, including finances. And sometimes that may be directly you're attracting that through your talent, your service. It may be the people that's around you, but it does fund the mission. So it's not everything, but it's part of the things. All right. So I want to see how long. Let me check in on my guest. And it's already 7:15. And I'm going to check on him here. I didn't want to go too long in my introduction because I want to definitely make sure I use the time that we do have. And I know we are adult listeners, and we may can listen to a 2-hour podcast. Hold on. Let me resend this. We may can listen to a 2-hour podcast from. Okay. I see you there. We may listen to a 2-hour podcast from Cat Williams and all that things that's really, really entertaining, but it's hard for us sometimes to listen to a real long podcast of things that we actually need to fill us up. I want to continue the stretches and hopefully we get there, but I know where we're at. So right now I'm going to pull back so I don't take any more time because we need to give all the time to our guest. And I'm going to introduce who it is. This is Marcus Faison that I'm bringing on. He is a former professional basketball player. He played Division I basketball for Siena College prior to his professional career, and he graduated as Siena's third leading scorer in school history. But as a former pro athlete, he experienced and he understands there is excitement, right? There's excitement of balling, but then there's the economics of business. And so that's life in general. There is this side, and then there's this side. There is sports, the fun, the entertainment. Then there's sports, the business. There's life, the fun and entertainment. And there's life, the business. All of it coincides. So I'm going to go ahead and bring Marcus on stage. Can you hear me?
Absolutely, loud and clear. How are you?
Loud and clear. Good job. Let me know if I need a backup from the mic too. So
No, no, you sound perfect, and you look even better, like as
thank you.
always. I love the outfit.
Listen, I had to show up like money today.
All right, I hear you. I hear you.
I had to show up, make sure I get into the energy, get into the spill, and wear that blue for that energy, the top of the mind energy to receive everything and to just be open to ask the things that need to be asked. So I did a brief introduction for you. I want you to just let's back up and just introduce, lay the foundation, kind of talk about yourself more and what kind of led you. You went from the athlete, pro athlete to trailblazing financial expert, helping people there. Like, so just kind of lay the ground a little bit so our viewers and listeners can better grasp.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, as you said, and thank you for the introduction, by the way. As Elakisha said, my name is Marcus Faison. I did play professional basketball in Europe for 14 years. Um, Prior to that, I did go to school at Siena up in New York. I worked out with a couple NBA teams before going into Europe. I went to all the NBA pre-draft camps. I was scouted by the NBA scouts during my college career, and I got an opportunity. And fortunately or unfortunately, I didn't sign for the full year. So at that time, I decided I want to continue to play basketball. It's very lucrative, and I took that path. So it led me to about 10 different countries. Spain, Turkey, Greece, Belgium, Germany, Finland, Philippines, Ukraine. I probably be missing a few, but it was a great journey. It was one that was, again, it was my livelihood. It fed my family. It fed many people in my family. And on our topic, obviously with finances, it showed me a lot of things because being in all these different countries, seeing all these different cultures, it showed me one thing that stood out, and I carry with me now is that we have a global economic crisis, and that is financial illiteracy, not understanding how money works, right? So it's not only here in the United States. This is a global crisis. So I say that because I was fortunate enough to be around a lot of people that made a lot of money, millions of dollars. And I was fortunate enough to be one of those in that same category from a sport. So obviously being young, being out of college, starting to make money at a very young age and not having that financial literacy. I was a business major, marketing major at Siena. So I'm in business, but we never got taught not one class about how to make our own money work for us. And nowadays, I don't want to make that as an excuse. I say this all the time when I do speaking engagements and I talk to adults as well as children, right, in high school and even younger. It's not our fault necessarily because it's not something that in the past has been taught in high school and even in the universities. So we do have a situation of not having access to the information. And so nowadays you're starting to hear a lot more about financial literacy, just like you mentioned. And it's starting to be mentioned so much that we have to keep the focus on the focus, right? And the focus is what is and how does money work? How does your personal income or the ways that you create and generate finances, how can you make that money work for you? So that's one of the biggest things that I took away from my planned career into leading me up into now being in the financial industry. And being introduced to the financial industry after my career was very humbling, right? It was a very humbling experience, if I could be transparent, because a lot of people don't realize when you have been in any industry, not just as an athlete, but you can also speak as an entertainer or whatever job that you've been on or you've been doing for 15,
Entrepreneur, worker.
whatever that is that you've been doing for X amount of years, when that income stream just turns off just like that, it can be alarming. It can be a lot of things. It can be depressing. It can be stressful. It can be so many different things because most of us, unfortunately, don't prepare in those early years because, and I can speak to as a lot of athletes, and I don't want to ramble on, but when we talk about athletes, I have a real pet peeve that people say, dumb athletes, dumb jocks, all of these things. And I have to admit that there are some times where, as athletes, as entertainers, as young people, we make decisions that are maybe not the best at that time, right? And when it comes to, excuse me, when it comes to the financial aspect and being honest, especially in basketball and in football, when we talk about, finances at that young age and those mistakes are being made, it's automatically attributed to, oh, they're dumb. Oh, they have an entourage. Oh, they have all of these different things to put them down. But essentially, it's about not having that lack of financial literacy, right? And it's not only an athlete thing. So I like to just put that straight. But the biggest thing with me, in my experience, coming into the financial industry was just how much, we don't talk about it. We were people making hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars in 10 months, but never having in the locker room the conversation of, hey, how can we turn this money into more money? How can we turn this money that we have and that we're making as young men and women nowadays, how can we turn this into generational wealth that,
Right.
And that's for children that we have or may not have, right? But even family members. So just looking at that, it was just something that was very humbling and also something that I knew was a place and a natural organic fit for me to reach out to people because I can talk from experience and I can also talk just from a point of view of, hey, I was there, I've done it, I've seen it, and there's no judgment, right? I say that a lot when I sit down with clients. This is a no judgment zone. We're here to educate, we're here to help you be able to implement and essentially change lives. So I hope that's pretty much my answer to that, and I think that's a pretty good introduction of how
You did. You came in hot. So I'm going to reel it back because you touched on a few things that I definitely want to cover. But even before I get to my questions, I always want to give the floor first to our viewers because I want to make sure their questions are covered and I rewind to mine. But I want you to address the question that's on the screen and then the question, because you mentioned financial literacy and I talked about that in the introduction before you came and we use that word a lot. And I think some people, it got really watered down, like you said. They're like, okay, financial literacy. I just hear that thrown around. What does that even mean? I think it kind of means what you were breaking down and explaining. But if you could reel them in when you talk about financial literacy, that'd be great. But first, let's get to 4G rap music question. What is the best route to take when transitioning into full-time entrepreneurship? What are some tools to establish longevity? So kind of talk about, if you're thinking about money from the perspective of being an employee, you want to go into a full entrepreneurship, and what are some tools
Okay.
financially to
Okay,
establish longevity?
that's a very good question. Very good question, and um, I would say number one is don't go too fast. Right. That would be my very first uh, answer to that is don't rush. And what I mean by that is, like you said, that transition. Everybody, I use this all the time. Everybody wants to be an entrepreneur until they become an entrepreneur because that takes on a lot of responsibilities that people say that they want, feel that they want, and think that they understand. But they always say, it's different when you see a shark in the tank and when you got to go and swim with that shark. So what I mean by that is number one would be take your time. Now, whatever means that you have currently, right, while you're building up funds to go on a full-time entrepreneurship, right? Take those funds. I would say start the saving. That's going to be your number one. Start saving, start budgeting for that transition. And that will be different for everyone, right? Depending on what job you have, how long it's going to take you to get in position. As you're transitioning for that full-time entrepreneurship, making sure that you have your ducks in a row for preparing for full-time entrepreneurships mean not only just you're working on your own schedule, right? That's what a lot of people love. Hey, I work on my own schedule. Okay. But time management is going to be very, very important, right? Time management. Also making sure that as from a business standpoint, that all systems are in place as far as what this full-time entrepreneurship will be, how you intend on funding it, and having enough capital to get started. Because we see a lot of times people want to get out of that job, and I definitely understand they want to get out of corporate as fast as possible and get on to their own entrepreneurship, whatever that endeavor may be. But very important is to realize not to jump out there too fast. And the reason why is because if that business that you're going to start is not fully in place, now you jump out there too early, and now you have to eventually go back to corporate because the business didn't work as you thought it was, as you thought it would. So some financial steps that you can take is just starting with a cash flow budget, right? That's with your 9 to 5 or your corporate job or whatever your current needs or current streams of income that you have coming in, making a cash flow budget, making sure that you can put aside some money for that business, right? Specifically for that business that you're saving so that when you get that business rolling, now you have the funds for things that you may not even think of. You have funds put aside for that. And there's different tools that you can start. A lot of people, and we're going to get into that as we progress in this conversation. But one of the things is, and if you're going to use the bank and you want to still have access to that money, a high yield savings account. And when we get into the numbers of it, we know that banks are not giving very much interest. Usually less than 1%. At least with the high yield savings account, you're going to be getting somewhere between 4.5. It's a little better, not much better, but a little bit better, and you still have access. There are insurances that you can have in place that can also be a wealth building vehicle, and also it's going to be a tax-free wealth building vehicle. So those are things that you can do because depending on your timeline, if that's going to be a transition of 2, 3, 5 years, well, now those would be the insurance would be one of the biggest ones that you can do that's going to actually give you very, very good returns. So I would say, in short, to kind of put it all together, I would say either insurances, high yield savings account, and really curve in and tighten up on the budget and prepare and put something aside for that business that you're looking to move into.
I like that you said that because one, there's just this whole myth out there that the entrepreneurship. First of all, that could look different for everyone, but we push entrepreneurship, but don't push those things to prepare for what that all looks like. And times are even more challenging to ever. If you have an employer, they could be your investor. When you get into entrepreneurship, we always look for all these investors. If you have employment, use it as investment money. Like you just said, right? So lay out what it would take for you to run whatever this business is of your own. Think of financially, how can you be sustainable? Then you're using the monies, the funds you get from your employer to pour into that. And I love how you just shared, not just pour into your business, but pour into these tools that when you're ready to walk away, you can use them real time for your business, especially when it comes to financially. So go ahead to the financial literacy question, like kind of really what to give it some teeth.
Okay.
If you was a financial literacy, what is that?
Okay, and like you said, the word is being tossed around, right, a lot. And for me, I really think, and even when you say, well, how does money work? Well, that's a broad statement, right? That's a broad statement. How does money work? What that entails is understanding, number one, compound interest, right? For example, understanding budgeting, a cash flow budget, understanding saving, understanding investing, right? And that's huge. And so compound interest is going to be your best friend wherever you can find that, understanding what interest is, right? That's one of the biggest things. And then once you understand, compound interest needs to be on your side, you need to find ways to have compound interest helping your money grow for you, not against you. Then that's going to go into the options that you have for your money. And there's only 3 different options that you do have. You have either your fixed accounts, your checking, your savings, your money markets, your CDs, where those are accounts that are attached to the bank, where you know that your money is safe, but also understanding, again, interest and understanding that in the banks, they're not giving you a lot of interest, almost none, for putting your money in the bank. So what are some other options? Well, there are variable accounts. Variable accounts, those are accounts where they're attached to the market. Now that will depend on each individual person, but that can include crypto nowadays. That can include stocks. That can include, like you mentioned, tapping in. If you're in corporate right now, that's also your 401k, your TSP, your IRAs, things of that nature, to where if that's an area where your money can grow, right? Understanding that, but also with those, understanding that there's a chance, because it's in the market, that you can also lose money in those areas. So understanding your threshold, right? Your investing threshold, right? Are you aggressive? Are you, you don't want to, or are you one that doesn't like the volatility of the market and you like protection? So understanding that. There's also the last area, which is your index accounts. And how these index accounts work is, unlike the variable account, it's not attached to the market, but it does mirror the market. And what that means is that these type of accounts are accounts to where when the market is up, you're going to be able to lock in those gains. But then when the market is down, like it has been in these last 50 days, now your money would be protected, right? Which is huge. And then once that market starts to go back up again, because we know that it's not going to be down forever, but once it starts to go back up again, now you would build on top of where you left off. So that's huge. So understanding what are your options for your money, and that's if you have a little bit of money or a lot of money, you're going to fit in one of those 3 categories: fixed account, variable account, or an index account. And the only other place is underneath your bed or in a safe at your house, right? So understanding those areas. And then lastly, a lot of people don't think about this, is how is your money being taxed, right? How is your money actually being taxed? And there's only 3 ways that categories that you're going to fit into that. If you're a W-2 employee, if you're working in corporate, you know that taxes are being taken out on the front end, right? Before you even get your check. Then you also have, if you're an investor, now this is not only for corporate, but if you're a real estate investor, for example, and you're selling properties, there's also capital gains tax that are taken out on the front end. Stocks, same thing. Capital gains taxes that are taken out on the front end. So that is where you would fit into the tax now category, taxed on the front end. Then you have your tax later or tax deferred accounts, where the money that goes in those accounts is not taxed on the front end, but it is taxed on the back end. And examples of that are your 401ks, which a lot of people in corporate, say, hey, this is going to be my retirement account, but don't fully grasp how that 401k works. Well, here it is. You're going to be taxed on the back end, right? When you're ready to take that money out in retirement, that's when you're going to get hit with taxes. If you are under 59 and a half, now there's going to be a 10% penalty on top of that state and that federal. So understanding how money is working. These are all financial literacy topics. And then the last one, you have your tax advantage accounts. These are accounts to where the money that goes in is tax-free. But then also when you're ready to take that money out, it's also tax-free. So examples of that are your Roth IRAs, right? And then you also have your cash accumulation insurance policies, right? To where you can, again, the money that goes in is either already been taxed or not going to be taxed. And then as that money grows, compound interest in these accounts, and you're ready to take that money out, then there's not going to be any taxes involved with that. So that's understanding that. And also with those insurance, there is no 59 and a half rule. You do not have to wait until the age of 59 and a half to touch that money. So understanding these different areas, understanding what are your financial goals, right? When are you looking to retire? And before you even get to retirement, if you're looking to move into entrepreneurship, how fast, how soon will kind of determine how much money you need to be putting in each of these different areas, or choosing which one is going to best fit for you. So that's what we look at with financial literacy in a nutshell, right?
Yep. And that's a big nut because it's full, right? So we need to understand fixed, variable, index. We understand what those three things look like. And no matter your income situation, you should be able to fit into at least one of those. And then financial literacy is understanding taxation. So understanding how you can get money, fixed, variable, index, and how you can, what you may have to owe, and how you can balance on what you owe. And that deals with taxation. And those three areas could be tax now, tax deferred, or tax advantage. So that's financial literacy. Did I get that right?
Absolutely. Yep.
All right. So I have a question to apply. The first one I'm going to apply, but before I get to my question, because my question is going to be, what are some practical first steps for someone who's starting to build wealth? I want to start with there, because every time we always talk about financial stuff, we talk about people that have money. What are we going to do with it? Let's talk about people that's broke, man. We're going to talk about broke. And now we know financial literacy. We're going to apply financial literacy to people that feel broke. But before I get to my question, I do have a question here. So as a new startup, how long do banks want you to be in business to start building separate business credit?
Well, I think on that, I think it's not really a blanket statement. I think different banks express or have different things, a different timing on when that business can start to develop it. But one of the things I would say to that is most banks, when you start that business, that startup, even if it's a startup, depending on if you already have been generating income, if you haven't, most of them will give you some type of, first of all, a bank account, number one. But then things that you want to start looking at is, and also depending on what kind of business you have, you want to start building that business credit by getting different or applying for different loans so that you can get credit cards to build up your account. There's also what is it? Brad Street, Brad and Smith. What is it? I'm sorry, I've lost my train of thought.
Duns and
Duns and Brad, yeah, Duns
yeah.
and Duns and
Duns and
Bradstreet, right?
Mhm.
The Duns number, right? Now that is essentially your business social security number, right? That's essentially your business social security number, and with that will be another way that you will be able to build that business credit. I would say anywhere between 1 and 2 years as a let's say a blanket statement. I would say anywhere between 1 and 2 years. But I have seen businesses that have started within 6 months, or even just getting started within the first 2 months, that have been able to start getting some sort of business credit. Now, the line of credit and things of that nature are going to vary as well. But I would say 6 months to 2 years.
Yeah, and I'm happy you brought that up. You definitely go to Duns and Bradstreet to make sure, because usually it automatically pulls your EIN. If you got everything set up correctly, it automatically pull that information and you actually have a Duns and Bradstreet set up. But just check with your business and set it up. And also just make sure the information is accurate that they pulled. So that is, like Marcus said, that is your social security for that. And you build up credit. Things that you're doing, make sure you're getting phones in your business name. Operate your business separately from you. Do the things that you would do for you. Make sure you do it for your business. So your Duns and Bradstreet is picking up on that. You have a business phone you're paying for, and it's showing you're scoring that and all the good stuff. So I'm happy you brought that up, because a lot of people don't know about Duns and Bradstreet, but also don't know, even if they do know about it, to make sure you go check, make sure it's up to date, all the information's there, and then it'll tie to your business. Make sure you have your EIN.
Definitely, because that is one of the biggest things that, like you mentioned, Eva Keisha, is being able to separate the two. That's also going to be a very important tool that I may have left out of, being able to separate your personal from your business. And I know sometimes at the beginning it can be hard, but that is the goal for any entrepreneur or business owner.
Yep. So now that you have it set up, make sure you're absolutely, like just said, we both were saying, start getting things in your business name, build that credit. Because sometimes a lot of people who do get things pretty quick with the business is because they were able to fund their business. They already are able to show the numbers. If we're not in that position to show the numbers, we've got to start creating the trustworthy credit, the things that they can look at and want to trust. Yeah. So that goes to the question that I had. Go back to, so what are some practical first steps for people that's starting to build wealth, want to build wealth, but may be considered broke? And right now, that's very easy to be considered. I don't know if you heard when I said John Hope Bryant was saying something in the video yesterday, responding to an influencer saying only 6% of, I believe he said Black Americans. You guys have to look at the video because I know he didn't say Americans. I want to say Black Americans make $100,000. And right now, what middle class used to be, upper class, all that has changed. So when I say broke, that's a lot of us. So what are some steps, even when you're considered broke, to start building wealth?
No, that's a very good question, and like you say, that's in these trying times right now. That could be many of us, have probably felt that way in the past, or could be feeling that way now. But I think the important answer to your question is, number one, focus on the two words that you said, right? Number one is practical, right? So what's the definition of practical? And the definition, if you look it up, it says to be practical means to focus on real world situations, which is today, these current events, and then actions and outcomes, rather than just think about the ideas or the theory. So basically, being practical involves making sensible decisions that are going to effectively help your problem. So what that means is, sometimes when we talk about being practical, that can be something as simple as, hey, I'm living in an apartment that's costing $3,500 a month, right? So now being practical would be, all right, that's a lot of money. I know I feel comfortable here. I want to be in this space, but being practical would mean, how can I cut down possibly, and now maybe drop that down to a $2,000. Maybe it's going to create some an uncomfortable space, but being practical and being in a position to where now, because we feel broke, right? Because we feel broke, because things are costing, we have to start looking at ways to cut, and it can be something that's going to cause you to be uncomfortable. But this is where number one thing that we sit down with when we sit down with a client and we hear, hey, at the end of the month, we don't have any money left over to do anything. The first thing that I would say, and that we recommend, and that we go over together with someone, is a cash flow budget. And with that cash flow budget, we're talking about looking at all of the money that you have coming in, all of it, but then more importantly, looking at all of what you have coming out. And obviously, we're going to look at the necessities, right? Things that we can't control, electricity, things of that nature, right? But there's a lot of things that we can cut. And we typically see that same person, that same individual who says, hey, I have nothing left over. Once we actually go through a cash flow budget, and I'm talking about all the way down to your Netflix subscriptions, all the way to your gym memberships, your car wash subscriptions, all of those different things. I mean, there's so many things that we spend small amounts on sometimes that we don't even think about. And at the end of the day, when that cash flow budget is done, you may have fined $100, $200, $300, $400 sometime, and you haven't changed not one thing. You've just cut out some of the same thing. You're not making any more money, but you have more money available at the end of the month because you've changed those habits. So that is the number one. And so when we talk about practical, when you use that term practical, this is what we're talking about. For the ladies, you may not like this, but going to get your hair done, nails done every other week. Maybe you cut that down to once a month. Now, I don't know. I know everybody likes to look good. You know, fellas like to go get your hair cut every 2 weeks. Things of that nature. We got to make choices, right? It's going to take discipline for you to change that mindset. And I know we're going to talk about mindset. It has to change have to have discipline. You have to be determined that you're going to change your situation. And then you have to actually apply these thoughts and these action, making it action instead of just a theory. So again, that can be a lot of different things for different people. Eating out is one of those things that I struggle with from a personal standpoint. Eating out, going out to eat. Well, hey, being practical might be eating at home, spending that same money to go to the grocery store, and now you're being able to save $100 here, $75 here, and all those things. Now, when you look at that cash flow budget now and you're starting to save, it's a habit. It's just like anything else. If you go to the gym, you start lifting weights, you get used to, now I can lift this, now I can lift more. It's the same thing when it comes to finances. You start with $50 a month, $50 a week, $100 a month, whatever it is that you see fit that you can do. Now, once you get in that habit, you're going to start looking, there's more ways that I can cut. I've been able to do this successfully. Now I can start cutting here. I can start cutting here. Now, once you see that and you see that, wow, I have a lot more money. Now it's going to change that thought process to where now you see it working. Now you can start to think about, instead of just saving, now you can start to think about investing, right? Because we know that we will never save our way to rich or to wealth. We're going to have to get that multiplier. And that multiplier is the eighth wonder of the world, compound interest. And so as you start to a cash flow budget, you start saving that money. Now you can start to moving into investing. And so that would be the steps. The second part of that question that I felt like was very important, and we should focus on that word is the feeling, right? It's a feeling of being broke. So we have a situation to where a lot of times, we might go out and buy this new car. We might go buy these new clothes. And a lot of times we're buying these things not really for ourselves, but we're buying things that we can't afford to impress people that really don't care, right? People that we don't know that really don't care. So when we talk about feeling broke, that's also a feeling that could change due to discipline, determination, and dedication to what you want in the long run. If you don't like the current situation, how can we change it? And that's going to start within. So I think that would be the best way to answer that question.
And that was amazing way because oh my gosh, I could stay another hour with the things you dropped there. Oh my gosh. Because I want to break down the difference between savings and investing because you brought that up. But
Mhm.
what would you say before we even get into that, just to piggyback a little bit off of without me trying to stay too long in there because you gave great stuff, but they find the money, the little bit, however it may be like 50, 100, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
How long, because you got to sacrifice. How long should they sacrifice that much? Of course, you should sacrifice. If you find extra, just let it go. But let's just talk about the babies now who's walking into it.
Mm-hmm.
How long should they sacrifice and where should they put it at? If we're talking about financial literacy, you got 3 buckets. People really don't mind giving money, but they have to have something in return. And like you mentioned, feeling. Some
Right.
people give away money, whether it's Netflix and hair and all these, because there's a return of feeling something right now in these time and days. So now if they have to learn to build money, they give it.
Mm-hmm.
Where should it go when we're talking about financial literacy to feel like they're getting some type of return, and how long can they
Yeah.
do it or go in and out?
Got you. Good, good, good. That's a very good question. And I feel like, in those three different areas that we mentioned, the fixed, the variable, and the index, I feel like you can use all of those at different times. So for the first part of your question is how long? Well, until you get to a place where you are no longer feeling broke, where you can actually have a 3 to 6 months, 6 months to 12-month emergency fund if something was to happen. Right now, unfortunately, 40% of Americans can't afford a $400 emergency. So putting yourself in position to where you have a emergency fund, a safe and a substantial amount of emergency fund. Also, you have access to funds that's going to, obviously, when you want to talk about the fixed accounts like the banks, right? If you want to put it into at least a high yield savings account where you still have liquidity, you can still touch that money, you can pay your bills and things of that nature. It's okay. It's good to have something there that you can actually touch and it's liquid. Then when you look at wanting to have your money grow, that's going to be a twofold question, because if you look at variable accounts, when you look at the stocks and crypto and things of that nature, depending on how much money you have, right? Do you have the safety? Like when you're talking about those variable accounts, I would recommend not putting any money into a variable account unless you know that you can stand to lose that money, right? And that's because it's in a volatile market, right? And that's volatile market is something that we can't control. If you could put small amounts of money in an index account where you know you're going to get gains with the market, and there's some other factors that also multiply your money, and then you also have the safety of knowing you're not going to lose any money, I would say that would be a way to go, because there's something called time value of money, to where the earlier that you start, and even if it's small, when that compound interest starts working for you, it turns into a snowball effect. And the longer that you give the money to work, you're going to see tenfold on the back end. So being able to use all three of those buckets is a possibility. It's just really the fixed and the index I would put to the forefront. And then if you have something left over, now you're looking at a variable account, crypto, stocks, things of that nature. That's where I would put those three for someone who's trying to get over, start something, has some money coming in, and want to know where's the starting point.
Can you, because remember, we may have some babes listening. Can you break down, because you used the word compound, and yes, it may sound defining within the word itself, but just so we're not missing in, nothing's going over anyone's head, and we bring it in. What is compound, and can you give an example of that when we talk about compound interest?
Yep, real quick. So interest, we know that interest is, money. Interest is money that's going to be paid back, or money that you're going to grow on your side. So there's simple interest and there's compound interest. And just to break this down, I'll show you the difference. Let's say that you had $100 and you were getting 10% simple interest. What that means is you're going to get 10% of $100, and let's say that you got that for 10 years. That would mean that you're going to get 10% of $100, which is $10. You're going to get that every single year for the next 10 years. So $10 is just what you know you're going to get. Now, when you talk about compound interest, we're going to use those same numbers. You have $100, you're getting 10% interest, but it's compounding. What does that mean? What is the difference? Well, after that first year, when you have the $10 and now you have $110 in that account, that second year, that 10% that you're getting is going to be 10% of a bigger number, because now you have not $100, you have $110. So in that second year, you're going to get 10% of $110, which is now $11. And now that's going to continuously happen year after year after year. And when that happens, that's where we have the term compound interest, because it's going to be more and more. And the simplest term is you're going to have interest on top of interest, is what compound interest essentially is.
I love that. I hope you all have your notebooks out so that way you know. Again, I asked this question, especially when you're feeling broke. I love how you just said, first, we got to focus on the feeling part, but we're going to get to mindset. But when money is tight, we know we have to move it right, because that's the reason why we don't want to move it, because we feel like we ain't got time to be giving up something and I don't have anything coming back. So now we know with financial literacy, we're looking at those 3 areas, what makes sense. You can move into each 3, but where do you start with the 1 and 2? And then when you do that, look for things that's going to give compound versus simple, because it's going to build your money more over that same period of time. So make sure you're writing those notes. So savings versus interest.
Mm-hmm. So savings, right? First, that's a starting point. That's a starting point for everyone, right? You have to end up saving money before you can start investing, right? So saving versus investing. So saving is going to slowly grow, right? Like we said earlier, you're never going to save your way to rich or save your way to wealth, right? But saving is necessary. And I'll just give you a quick example. When I first started playing professional basketball and I started to really make money at a young age, at 23, 24, in my first maybe 2 or 3 contracts, it was the first time that I was really making substantial amount of money. So for myself, being young, I used to love to just see the money just grow in the account, right? 10,000 here, 20,000 there. Oh, wow, my account is really growing. Now that's good, right? You want to have, you will have to save at the beginning. But like we talked about, just saving money in your bank, you're not getting interest. That money is not working while it's sitting there. It's going to grow, but you're going to be the one that's making it grow. It's not the interest rate that's making that money grow, right? Now, in turn, when you compare that to investing, right? Now, that same money that you're putting in whatever account that you're investing in or whatever you're investing in, now that money is making babies. That money is growing. That money is making more money. And that's where the difference between saving and the difference between investing. Your money is going to grow a lot bigger when you invest over time. And it's probably going to grow a lot faster due to compound interest. I hope that answers that question.
That did, because the savings is a savings in the bank that's simple.
Simple interest. If you're getting interest, right? If you're getting any interest at all.
If you get anything. So if you're getting anything, it's going to be simple.
Absolutely.
But if it's not, then it's just whatever you keep putting in there is the only thing that you're going to actually get.
Right. All exactly. Right. Now, because of the low amounts of interest that the simple banks are giving us. Now, when you look at, that's why looking at a high yield savings account, which a lot of people now are looking into, hey, at least you're getting a bigger rate of return to where you can see, that money is growing a little bit more because it has interest, a higher rate of interest. There's something that, and with that, this will be my last thing that when we talk about the savings and the versus the investment. There's a simple rule that we talk about all the time, and it's called the rule of 72. And what that rule of 72 is just a simple math formula that will tell you how long it will take you to double your money, but it's based off the interest rate wherever your money is positioned. So when we're talking about the banks, or when we're talking about an account that's getting compound interest, that's going to give you a very good picture of how fast your money is going to double. So that rule is, if anybody's taking notes out there, that rule is 72 divided by whatever the interest rate wherever you have that money positioned. And that'll give you how long it will take you for your money to double. That's called the rule of 72.
72 divided by the interest that your money's making you.
There you go. Wherever your money is positioned. So a lot of times we talk about the banks, right? And we're going to be nice to the banks and say that the banks were giving you 1% interest, even though a lot of them are giving a lot less than that. We're going to, just for round numbers, if you put 72 divided by 1 is going to give you 72. That is the amount of time that it would take you to double your money. 72 years if you were getting 1% interest on your money to double your money just one time.
That's what's going to ask you. It's going to ask you, the rule of 72 is measuring what? So the rule of 72 is measuring how long it would take you
to double your money.
To double your money. All right, you guys. Rule of 72 is what you use to determine how long it would take you to double. So if you invested 100 in something, you would use rule of 72 to figure out how long it would take you to get 200. Is that correct?
Right. Now you're not going to use the amount. You're going to use the 70. You're going to use the interest rate that your money is accumulating. So like that you're getting on your money.
Exactly. So if we was to use the example you gave for the $100, and it was the simple one, and we know it's $10, right? We would do 72 divided by 10.
10%. Yeah, there you 10%. Go. Yes. And that would be 7.2 years before that $100 would double to $200. Absolutely.
So this is how you could decide what to mess with and what not. Before I get to the next question, let's go ahead and take Tranisha's question, because we gave example of what compound interest is. We talked about variable. You gave an example when you talked about crypto and all that. But what is an index fund? Like, what's a good index fund to probably start with, and probably a good investment?
Okay, yeah, that's a very good question. Is that Tranisha?
Yes.
Okay, very good question, Tranisha. So a very good index account to start with would be, I would say, something like an IUL, an Index Universal Life Policy. If you're physically able to be approved for that, then I would say an Index Universal, because it's very affordable. It's up to your budget, and that's a way that you can get compound interest. It's a way that you know that you're going to be protected from the volatility of the market, and also you have access to a portion of that money tax-free. So you're getting four different aspects all wrapped in one. And so let me break that down real quick again. You can get 4 different aspects all wrapped in one. And this is with something called an Index Universal Life Policy. And what that is the 4 aspects that you're going to get wrapped in one. Number one, your family would get added protection if something was to happen to you, because you'll be insured, right? So if something happened to you, now your family has you have a beneficiary to where now your family's going to get some money if something was to happen to you. Also, they have living benefits to where if something happens to you while you're living and you have a heart attack, stroke, cancer, you get in an accident, now you can get funds from that company that can now turn into income replacement. It can also turn into, if something really happens and you're talking about home health care, now that could pay for that with long-term care. But then you also get a tax advantage account If you remember what we talked about, tax advantage means when you take the money out of that account, there's going to be no taxes involved. So that's the second aspect. Then you get the safety of knowing that you're not going to lose any money when the market goes down because of a floor. And then lastly, you get growth to where you know that when that market goes up, your money's going to be growing. And there's also a multiplier called a participation rate that's also there to help your money grow. So that would be my first start to an index fund, the most simple way. There's also one, depending on someone, if they have a 401k or an IRA from another job, we can also protect those from the volatility of the market with an index account as well.
Wow. And so the how much to start with, whatever, the more you can pour into the thing, the better, right?
Yep. The more that you can put into the index account. Now, there's a difference between an index fund and an index account. There's also a difference because there's index funds can also be part of a 401k that's in the volatile market. So when we talk about index accounts, those are the ones that are going to give you the growth when the market is up, but also the protection when the market is down. And to answer that question, yes, those are where they're going to fit around your budget, right? They're going to fit around your budget. They're going to fit around your financial goals. And that's where the financial professional like myself and the people that are on our team to where we can help design that correctly and for an individual. They're not just a cookie cutter account. It's one that's going to be designed specifically for the individual that we're sitting down with.
So I hope you guys wrote that. Please write that down. So where you're looking at different things, which I say, speak with Marcus about it, connect with him. We're going to talk about where you can connect with him after this. But when you're looking at all the things, don't get it confused because you'll hear certain words. We know index account versus index fund. You'll say, Marcus told me index fund, I did this and it's so volatile. He said index account. So make sure that you're taking those notes and you're separating the two when he's talking about index. So it's index account. What about so money mindset, right? We're talking about all this. I don't want to skip money mindset because sometime, and I said this earlier in my introduction, we can listen to all the experts, read all the books, listen to all the podcasts, but it's a mindset thing that helps us to navigate all of this. And when we talk about money mindset, how can we, shift that and help someone? For me, I read and apply. There's a book that I have called The Energy of Money. It's one of those things you can't just read. It's literally you reading it, and it's activities and things that make you reflect and do throughout the entire thing. But when you think about money mindset and you give advice on that.
Mm-hmm. So for myself, when we talk about that money mindset, it's really the psychology of money, right? Well, how we think about money, and I don't want to stereotype, but when we think about our community, we think about a survival mentality, right? And a survival mindset. And to everyone's testament, we have to think in that way sometimes, right? We have no choice but to think in that way. But when we want to talk about money and we talk about a money mindset, we have to have that shift from the survival to the abundance mindset, because only with that mindset will we start to think, and not only think, but make actions and take steps to get us to that abundance. We have to shake the thought process of we can't, we're behind the eight ball, we can't do it, they do it, but we're not worthy. No, we have to change that by, number one, educating ourselves, right? We're in the technology information world where there's a lot of things online. Now, there are some good things and bad things online. You have to decipher which one. That's why credibility of where the information is coming from is key. It's essential that you understand the background, the credibility of the person that you're getting that information from, right? That's number one. Then number two, educating ourselves about money, right? Wanting to learn, wanting to sit down with the financial professional, wanting to learn, read books. We have several books. We have books that we give out to individuals. One is 8 Financial Breakthroughs, right? Is by an author by the name of Alvin Darien II, and that just breaks down. It just breaks down 8 different areas to where if you focus your finances in all of those areas, there's no way that over time you won't build wealth. There's another book that we look at sometimes. It's called How Money Works. It's one of the top sellers in the country for personal finances. It's been on, both of these books have been on CNBC. It has credibility behind both of these books to where, so understanding, and they're very layman's term books so that someone at the age of 10 all the way up to 80 can read the same book, but then also apply those same financial concepts. So the mindset shift has to go from survival to abundance. And that you'll see, and most people will see that it'll change the trajectory of where they're going, and the rate of time that it takes to get there can be kind of collapsed when that mindset changes. Because like we talked about, just a simple habit of saving money, right? Because like it or not, our habits will determine our financial future. It's going to be either a good habit and you're going to have a good financial future, or it's going to be a bad habit and it's going to create a bad financial future for someone. So I think that those would be my words to money mindset.
And like you said, yeah, the psychology of it, which means psychology is a relationship. Like it's literally working on a relationship. That's the one thing I was learning. In this book, I say, I never really thought about that, because all of us have some type of relationship to money based of our experience in life, period. And like you said, it's not about just stereotyping. There are groups who started way behind. There were groups who did things and didn't have, or were shown you were less than. So it's about breaking off that relationship and building a great relationship. And that starts with the mind. But we do. It's a trigger for a lot of us.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Let me add to that real quick, because, when we talk about that mindset, again, to go back to that money mindset, when you talk about the relation, you reminded me that relationship that you talk about with money. That's the first thing that I like to ask people, like, what is your relationship? What do you think of when you think of money? What do you think it's meant for? And one of the common answers that we get when we hear what is money for, number one question is to spend it, right? To spend it. And that is because we look at that from a survival. I have to spend this before it's gone. I have to spend this while I have it. But if we could transform that mindset to now, before I want to think of money as, when I have money, I want to first think of how I can make this money make more money. And then once I'm able to make this money make more money, now I can spend that money that my original money generated. Now I can spend that money and still have money left over because I didn't blow what I had at the beginning, if that makes sense.
That makes absolute sense. So if we're talking about eliminating debt, skip around here. If we're going to talk about eliminating debt, saving more, or investing, how should we prioritize that? Is it by person, money by money? Like if we're looking at eliminating debt, saving more, or investing, how should that be prioritized?
Well, yeah, that is an individual thing, because when we talk about debt, right? When we talk about debt, in comparison to saving or investing, which one do we do first? Well, first we want to understand. Firstly, saving is always going to be number one, because without saving, there's no way that you're going to be able to knock down any debt. You're not going to be able to invest. So saving will be number one always to start. But then when you start talking about debt or investing, when we talk about debt, what type of debt are we talking about? Because this also goes into that money mindset. We think of, when we hear debt, A lot of times you hear, oh my God, no debt. I don't want any debt. I want to be debt free. Well, there's also some good debt. So there is bad debt, but there's also some good debt. So which debt do you have? Number one would be what you want to look at, right? And then obviously, if you have bad debt, we want to get rid of the bad debt, right? We want to get rid of the bad debt. But if you could put yourself in position to be investing, it goes along with what we just said. If you put that money, you're saving it. Now you're putting that money in an investment where it's going to grow. Now, what about thinking about taking that money that's growing and now knocking off some debt at that time, right? That can be one way to look at it. Now, if debt is swarming you, right, then now obviously you want to knock off that debt with that savings, piece by piece. There's many different ways that you can look at eliminating that debt. You know, people have probably heard about that snowball effect, looking at the interest rate. Again, interest, right? Understanding interest, looking at that interest rate and determining which one has the higher interest rate that I'm paying on, right? Because now if you're paying that highest interest rate, then obviously you're paying more money in that account. So maybe knocking that down first, you know, or vice versa. So there's different ways that you can look at it, that once you free up one debt, now you can pour that same money that you were contributing to one debt. Now you can pour it into the other one. And now that's where you're going to get those debts where something that might take 15 years, now it could condense it down to 8 years, you know. So there's different strategies. And that's all what someone would look at on an individual level. But there are strategies out there to get that debt down while still saving and while still investing. There's ways that you can also kind of combine all three. So,
and I want to get your thought on this. It was an insight that I was given, because especially a lot of us do stress and we'll focus on all this debt. We don't want to leave debt to our family. We don't want to leave debt to our kids. So we start all the money we have coming in, like, I can't invest it here. I can't do this. I got to take care of debt. One thing that I was told and I was given insight on is don't focus on that. Invest your money into all this, to the point you made about insurance. Get these insurances. So if you were to pass, it could be these things, these insurances that take care of these things that you're talking about. So still use the money you have. Don't waste it on keep chasing a debt that you will probably never pay down anyway. Mm-hmm. First, use all your money to put into things that if you were to expire, you will have all these things in place that will take care of all these debts. Oh, yeah. So invest in these insurances and stop pouring your money into debt that is you may never pay down if that is your worry about survival mode, and if you're going to leave your kids with nothing or family with all the stuff. Get all the insurances.
That's a very good point that you talk about. And when we sit down with families, a lot of times when we look at families, that's always a part of that family planning, because of just that, what you said. We show people ways that insurances, and you know, and this is where, you know, and this is not all about insurances. There's all many different ways that we can talk about it, but we have to understand that insurances we can use them to our advantage, right? And when we talk about this family, and just like you mentioned, there's ways that we can show people how these insurances can now turn into mortgage protection. What do we mean by that, right? If you have a husband and wife, and you have $500,000 of mortgage that you have to pay. Well, what happens then if that husband, who's one of the main, you know, the family is or depending on his income, well, then what happens if he passes away, right? Well, now if you have an insurance in place that's covering you for $750, $1 million, whatever it is, excuse me. Now, if something happens to the husband, now you're getting that money that is covering. You're going to get money that's going to cover that house. So what was that? Mortgage protection. It protected that wife from now having to worry about how she's going to pay. It's paid immediately, and now she has a house paid off. If you're talking about leaving things for your family, for your children, leaving that generational wealth, well, insurances is also a way to get them started in that good in that first step to having money. But all of that goes to say, if you don't have the financial literacy and you receive that money, there's a very good chance that that money is going to go away. So it all circles back full circle to financial literacy in the end of the day, and understanding what that means and wanting to understand what it is. And now not only wanting to understand, but actually applying that. That's where how that comes back full circle.
Well, that's a good thing because you said as you get more money in, if you don't have that financial literacy, it's still the same thing. And I've seen that a lot, especially on the legal side, where people have left so much for individuals and they lost everything that they worked hard for to leave them. Because either they didn't want to deal with it or they didn't have the financial literacy. So, what are some of the biggest mistakes that you've seen from people when they may get a lot of money or start earning more money, but don't know how to manage it? What are some of the biggest mistakes that you've seen?
Just that what you said, and it's easy to become victim to that, and it's something that actually has a name. It's called lifestyle creep or lifestyle inflation. And what that is simply when the income increases, whether that's in a lump sum, you get a raise, what have you, then you start to spend more, right? You start to spend more. You might go buy a car, or if you are paying down your debt and now you have that money freed up. Lifestyle creep. You want to start to spend more money. What are some ways or things to do, or practical ways to kind of avoid that? Number one is discipline, right? Discipline is going to be the number one focus of understanding that, hey, just because I'm making more money doesn't mean that I have to necessarily go out and spend the money that I just came into, right? So setting up a time frame to where as you build that money, once you receive that increase in money or that lump sum of money, now same thing, making that money make more money to where now if you want to go get that new car, if you want to go get that new house, whatever it is, when you're able to make that money that you have and you're able to purchase that house, car, whatever that is, 2 or 3 times, that's the time now that you can start to spend. When your money has made money, now you want to spend that money that has been made, those dividends, that interest that has been made. Now you want to spend off that if you want to have longevity and stretch that money out as long as possible. Those are ways that you can accomplish that feat.
And I'm happy you said that too, because there's still everything circles back around to what we were saying, the feeling of broke. That is a state of being than an actual thing. These are some things that hit home because some people be like, child, they ain't feeling. I know I'm broke. I see this. But that feeling, that money mindset, because we always say a lot of times when we rather look at celebrities, athletes, whatever, here, if we look at here recently, the most recent situation with Pinky in her restaurant, right? She is transparent about the situation with that, with a lot of money going out. It was money coming in, right, with investors, but because all this extra money coming in a lot, it was way more pouring out
right.
that could be covered. And she lost through restructuring. I'm gonna cover this in a later thing, but through restructuring, legal restructuring, she had to lose her business. She had to have her business go to an assignee, a company, where in that case, her restaurant was up for bid.
Wow.
For people to bid on it and take it. Luckily, she was in a position to win the bid. She had to sell off some of her real estate, pull all the strings, and she was able to buy her company back. But she was at, I believe she said, 100 and some million, 70 something million. Wow. So you have to listen to it. It was a lot. It was a whole lot. So if we hear these people that make multi-millions, billionaires, you're like, how can you lose all this because of the life creep? The more money you make, the more it exposes whatever it is, your mindset or your feeling or whatever this is. I have more money. It amplifies more of what I believe about this. And so you still be in the same situation, still be broke as a multi-millionaire. Unless you shift that mindset. But Pinky, the most recent situation as an example, but we could look all around.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I sit down with people all the time and it's funny, we started this conversation talking about people who have feel broke. Well, it's not just the one, and please trust me when we say it's not only the ones that's low earning, right? Low
Right.
earning. We talk about high earners that are making $250,000, 300,000, $500,000. But if you talk to them, they still feel broke. And that's where you talk about financial literacy, understanding where can I put this? How can I manage this? What are my budget? What is a budget that I have? Even though I make a lot of money, you still want to have a budget, right? And so all of those things, it's not about how much money you make. It's about what you do and how much money you can keep, right? That's the biggest lesson that I've learned in my time in the financial industry is literally not about how much you make, it's about how much you keep. And it comes down to, again, this financial literacy. And I know I keep harping on it, but financial literacy, understanding how money is working is not a luxury. It's a necessity. It's a necessity that we understand that from the youngest age all the way up to the older ages.
Yeah, because I know some people say too, listen, I can't take any of this with me. I'm leaving here anyway. I'm gonna live like whatever. But even though you can't take these things what you want, you can help other people build if that's not your thing. You still want financial freedom while you're here.
Yes.
Just letting it go and do whatever doesn't mean you necessarily have financial freedom. It just means, you have no financial structure, but it's
Right.
not necessarily a freedom because there still could be all those other stresses that come from it. But what does financial freedom, what does that really mean to you? What is financial freedom and what is asset versus liability? Because you talked about there's good debt, there's some debt that's not
Right.
good. So what is financial freedom and how can you segue that into,
Yeah.
breaking down assets versus liability in that freedom?
Right. So with financial freedom, obviously now that is going to be an individual. It's going to be different for everybody, right? Because financial freedom for one person could be time freedom, right? You know that, hey, I can be comfortable at $100,000 and I'm comfortable. I have my children. I'm able to go and do things with them. I'm able to travel. But then you have some people where they say, hey, my financial freedom is when I have $1 million sitting in my bank account, right? And I can travel 4 times a year. And so it's that financial freedom is really subjectable to the individual. But overall, that freedom is money. Like you mentioned, you said something earlier that, hey, money is not everything, right? Everything is not based on money, but money, you need money to do all things, right? So when you're talking about this financial freedom, that can be something that's just as simple as going to the grocery store, going to the movies, taking a trip. You need money to fund any of these things. And if for the holistic or organic individuals, if you want to go to the park and you want to build, make your own clothes, you want to grow your own food, it's still going to take finances. So that financial freedom is subjectable, but it all comes down to what you feel comfortable with in your finances. What can you do? Do you have the finances to do whatever it is that you want to do, to have the freedom to do whatever it is that you want to do, whether it's big things or little things? You can decide because you have the finances to do whatever it is that you want to do. That's how I would determine financial freedom.
And I'm happy that you said that it's subjective because that is something I don't measure my financial freedom by a dollar amount at
Mm-hmm.
all. I measure my financial freedom by I don't have to ask for permission
Mm-hmm.
and I'm able to position. So I don't
There
have to
you
ask
go.
for permission for me to do anything and I'm able to put other people in great positions. That is what I always work towards. And
Wow.
I know I arrive to my financial freedom when I'm able to attain both and I don't have to do one and I'm able to do the other. I don't even have a dollar sign. So
That's
I'm happy
great.
that you brought that up.
Yeah, that's great. That's great, and that's where it comes from, right? You may say that, You don't even have a number. And then you may have sit down with someone who, no, I have an exact number. I want $25,000 per month. That's my financial freedom. It's going to allow me to travel. It's going to allow me to do whatever it is that I want to do. But I need about 25, So that's where it's different. And that's what I mean. But the financial freedom is making sure that you have it, right? At the end of the day.
That's it. What's asset versus liability? When you talk, because debt, good debt. So what is the difference between the two? And we see a lot of wealthy people have things that are liability, but they using their debt and using it a certain way. But what is asset versus liability?
Right. I guess the simplest way that we can break that down is assets are things that are going to make you money, and liabilities are things that are not going to make you money, or actually going to take away from your money, right? And when we get specific in those assets, you talk about houses, right? Real estate. Those are usually something that a part of the portfolio that's going to be an asset. When you're talking about, I guess clothes, things of that nature, in general, that's going to be a liability. And why? Because unless you're going to you're purchasing clothes and you're reselling them to make money, then they're going to be a liability, right? So again, assets are those things that are making you money, whatever it is. People talk about a car, oh, it's depreciating. Well, if that car is generating you money because you're renting it out on Turo, or that can now also be an asset. So it's really based on, is that whatever you're talking about as far as an asset, is it making you money? And then when you're talking about liabilities, is it decreasing your finances, right? I would say those would be the two. And when we look at good debt and bad debt, there's good debt. You can say even on your home, right? I was just literally in a week, over this past weekend, I was on a real estate seminar, right? Tax liens, to be specific, to where they talked about this over the weekend, where having debt, right? Having these different properties, but being able to leverage that debt into now borrowing, but then borrowing to invest, right? So those are things to where that can be a liability if you just let it depreciate, but also you can turn it into an asset because now you're able to take funds from this property, put it into an investment, and make that money make more money. So there are a lot of things that can be categorized, but to break it down, assets makes money, liability is going to take away.
I'm happy you said that because, yeah, I've always heard, like, especially like the home, right? We buy our home, and I think it was Rich Dad, Poor Dad I read years ago. It was talking about like some of those things. It's a liability because, I mean, you still, until you pay that mortgage off, this home is a liability, but that liability can also be an asset because you can build that equity in it that can bring you money, that brings you other things that you can take that equity out to invest in something else that brings you money. So it may be that liability on this end, but it's an asset if it's going to bring you in money, which it will in equity, and then you do something with that. Am I hearing that right?
Definitely. Absolutely. I actually heard one. I sat down with a multimillionaire who was at this event, and he said, quite frankly, I don't ever really want to pay off my house. I don't ever want to pay off my house because I'm going to continue to use the assets, my equity in this house, take it out tax-free, and I'm going to build and grow and keep investing in this real estate to where now that money I'm going to pay, right? But I probably will never pay off my mortgage entirely, but I'm going to use that equity, like you said, as an asset to build and grow other businesses. So yeah,
that's some things to learn. Like you said, he's not even focused on, I'm not paying this off. I'm keeping this as something that generate money. And the point I just made earlier, one of the things that saved Pinky, because she was buying a lot of real estate. I remember she was posting about that. And she said that she was able to call Robert Smith and say, hey, can you buy this such and such property that was worth a whole lot? And he was able to do that. And that was a liability that turned into an asset for her to get her company back. So
absolutely,
that's a lot of things we got to understand too, when we get rid of stuff or we sell things, or sometimes we need to keep those things in whatever bare minimum way we can keep it, we do it because it can be building money
And
for us.
also it goes with taxes as well, because you're pulling from real estate, putting into other areas of real estate. Now that's where the understanding of taxes and how to minimize those taxes that we have to pay. So again, we talked about those areas that we talk about as far as compound interest, where to put your money, but also taxes. That's where all of those things, and we've been talking about financial literacy and what that means. All of these things wrapped together is financial literacy.
So, and listen, y'all, if y'all had a question, you better put it in. You better drop it because I'm about to have Marcus share what is that last thing you can pour in, like whether it's something that can help people generate income outside 9 to 5. Honestly, all the things you were talking about, there's different. Those are what are different ways to, generate additional income. So, what to you would be the thing that you would drop for people right now that they can start right now to help elevate their life? And then also, how can they connect with you?
Okay, repeat that again. I want to
Okay.
make sure that I want to make sure that I'm answering this question correctly. So give it to me again.
Yes. So, because what I was going to ask you was like, what are some ways that people may be overlooking to generate 9 to 5? Like,
Okay.
what's the difference between being rich and wealthy? All those things. But instead of that, because kind of throughout, you kind of address those. So I wanted to give the floor to you of what it is in you that you want to cover, that you want to leave, that maybe I didn't ask, they didn't ask yet, but you want to pour into them that they should know right now to start right now, or whatever it may be, whatever is in your heart and mind to pour to them.
Okay, got you. So right now we're living in a time now, a trying time from an economic standpoint, right? With everything that's going on currently. But one thing that we do have on our side is that nowadays in 2025, there's so many avenues and ways to make money where there's really no ceiling, right? When you talk about the internet these days, right? When you're able to have 15-year-olds make multiple six figures, right? Multiple six figures, that shows that we have access to finances. Now, when we say, hey, 9 to 5, I don't have time. There's a lot of things that mindset has to change, and we have to say, no, I'm going to find. So find things that you like, right? If most people right now are working a 9 to 5 that they don't necessarily like. So instead of trading that time for your money, and that's it, and that's the end of the day, like you said, Alakisha, make that a pathway to now do some things that you like and be able to fund that, right? And whatever it is, if you like gardening, if you like cooking, we want to have now, it's in 2025, it's almost impossible to have one single stream of income. You have to have multiple streams of income. Some people call them a hobby, some people call them side hustles, whatever it is, in multiple ways that you can generate income. Now you can start to think of that mindset shift. Now I can save. Now, excuse me. Now I can save. Now I can start to have that budget. Now I can start to invest. And now when you start to invest, now once you're seeing more of that money come in, now you can transition to something more in that you like with your life. Because in the end of the day, when we look at, it's something called a 40, 40, 40, 40. We usually take, and this is where most people fall into, unfortunately. We're on a job that we work for maybe 20, 30, 40 years, right? We get 40% of our income that we really want. That's what we're going to get in retirement, right? And we usually have about 40 years of retirement, and we only have 40 years to build up this income, right? So when we look at these different areas, what is it that we're going to be doing, right? As far as is the goal to just work, get to age 67, be in retirement? Is your retirement a retirement that is something that you want to do or is something that you have to do? And is it, which way are you retiring? Are you retiring how you like or how you have to? Are you going to have to get a job because now you find out that your 401k is not enough because it's not generating enough income? So looking at all of those areas, making sure that now you sit down with the financial professional. We do this for us. We do it complimentary because we want to get the financial education out there, and we don't want to make finances be a reason why you can't grow intellectually, right? So even if you don't sit down with myself or someone on my team, get with someone that is going to break down the educational aspect, understand how money is working so that you can start not tomorrow, but today, because time goes as fast as you can think, right? And so I would say taking action today to start to improve your future for tomorrow will be the biggest takeaway that I hope everyone that was on this call today got from our conversation.
Where can they connect with you at?
Okay, so I am on IG, Instagram at MVF, the number 2 MVP, and that's on IG. And then I also have Facebook under my name, Marcus Faison. And you can just DM me on any of those places, and I can reach out. We can sit down. You can hop on a calendar. Again, it's all complimentary. There's never ever going to be a charge for giving this information and our recommendations. And yeah, I would love to sit down with as many of you as possible and go over what your financial goals are, where you're at currently, and where you're looking to go. And from there, we can come up with recommendations on get you moving toward towards those financial goals. Also, you can email me at Marcus, Marcus, at fpneducator.com. That's my email address.
And I say it's important to, like, I know you mentioned, you could sit with you or somebody else. I'm big on not just service providers, because this is how I move in the world, right? I tell people, I vet you just as much as you vet me, because I believe in relationship. You don't just want someone who's just an expert in here, but they're not getting you. They're not trying to get you. They're just stuck on the books and do whatever. You can't delve in. So I say, Marcus is someone to get that call, to have that conversation. I mean, you can feel energy. You can feel someone who, one, has been there. It's more than book read, it's street cred, is what I say. And also, having that culturally sometime, you just bring something different because you can look at it from all different types of areas, especially when you well-traveled and all that great stuff too. So I say definitely reach out, connect with Marcus for real. This question that react is what we should have actually started with. That's why I told y'all to ask these questions, because this is important. Like, this is big.
Yeah.
This is big. I know you just gave whatever, and I know some of you adult listeners who are struggling probably to hold on. Maybe not. Maybe not. You may say, this is fire. I need this. I'm investing my time. That's one thing that doesn't cost you anything that you have to go get. You already have it. So invest it. I do want it. What advice would you give when couples don't have the same financial goal? This is
a touchy
big
subject. This is a touchy subject and can be very, very tricky. And I'm glad we're ending on this one here. And remember, like you said, Keisha, at the beginning, I am not a family or couples consultant. So I want to give, this is an opinion and just a thought. So
this is not financial advice. This is Marcus just speaking on his opinion.
This is just my opinion. So number one, I would focus on, my own mindset. First of all, and this is real, I would focus on making sure that my mindset is your individual mindset, first of all, is on financial goals. Now, when you talk about, as a couple, that's where, number one, having this conversation before you are a couple is probably a very good question to be asking, because
a whole nother segment.
a whole nother segment. When I saw this
gonna get into
question,
that.
when I saw this question, I was thinking, whoa, this can be a whole topic
It is.
for a
There
whole
is when I'm
nother
talking about
conversation.
prenup and all that stuff. But go ahead.
Absolutely. So, and I've seen that from my field as well as a professional. I've played with teammates who signed prenups because in the end of the day, you know, when if things go well or things don't go well, in the end of the day, you're going to have to look at yourself and say, hey, this is what my mindset was. I was pulled down by someone else. So that conversation is a tough one to have. My best recommendation would be have that conversation before. But if, excuse me, but if you are already in that relationship, in that couple, I would say, hey, we have to sit down because where are we going? Because if we're going to be a couple, where are we going as a couple if our financial goals are not aligned, right? If you're going to spend all the money and now we can't move forward, how can I be a part of this? I can't be a part of this, right? And so I would say have that conversation, making sure that if you're not on the right minds, the same financial goals, have to find some plan to get on the same goals, but also being able as a leader, either side, wife or the husband or whatever the couple's, the one who has the financial goals, they have to be a leader and say, hey, these are steps that we need to take if we're going to be successful financially for us, for our family, for our couple. That would be my recommendation. And then on the back end, again, remember, this is my decision, my recommendation and my thought would be if we can't get on the same page financially, it will make it very hard to continue a relationship because as we know, finances are it's one of the biggest reasons that we have divorce in the United States today, which is that question, because it causes divorce, it causes domestic abuse, finances causes so many different things when it pertains to couples that it's very first thing that somebody, or one of the first things that should be a conversation before a couple is even established, I would say.
You did good on that one. That ice was so thin, and you glided on it. You didn't hit your pride. No pressure. No pressure. You was like, woo. So this was fire. This was let's go. This is it. So
hey, thank you for the invitation. It was a great conversation. I enjoyed it.
Like you said, it wasn't that it's necessary. It's necessary. It's not a luxury. This was all I'm doing is things that are necessary. Necessary. So I hope you all had your notebook, your laptop, whatever, because quick rundown. He talked about financial literacy. So now when you hear this word, it's not just a word in the clouds. Financial literacy. Oh, fixed, variable, index. Okay. I got to think about that. Taxation. Okay. Financial literacy is understanding those things. The differences in taxation, tax now, tax deferred, tax advantage. So you have an up. Remember the rule of 72. When you decide to move in the way that you're going to move in all of those things using your financial literacy, understand how long it's going to take for you to double your money. Remember the rule of 72. And don't get caught in the 40, 40, 40. Find your thing in life, find it. But more importantly, connect with people to help us elevate in the areas that we really do not know or do not understand. So that is my rundown on it. But I hope you have more notes than that. So that is a wrap for today's episode of Seek Elevation Experience. I thank you so much, all of you, for engaging, adding value to this powerful conversation, asking those questions. I have hope and I believe that the things I hear are not true. The things I see are, which are, we want more. We want to understand. We just got to know where to go get it. And we have to get it in a way that is digestible, that meets us where we're at. So I get that here. And that's what I try to do is bring people that can do that. So remember, the more you know, the more you grow, the more you learn, the more you can definitely earn, and you learn today. But when you share, you care. So please share this. Share this with your circle. Drop this segment. Don't keep this knowledge to yourself. Spread this wisdom and tag a friend. And let's continue to elevate together. Until next time, I want you to keep striving, keep growing, and most importantly, keep seeking elevation. See you next time. Peace and progress. Thank you so much, Marcus. And
Yes,
we're going to do
thank
a lot together. And
you.
I will be making my call. My husband and I will make our call. We're going to sit down. Some people I work with, we're going to shift over here to work with you. So
Okay. Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Well, peace and blessings to everybody that joined. And hey, learn, and you will earn. There you go. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Bye bye.
Stay there, Marcus. Oh, he